The U.S. needs China more than China needs the U.S. China's just gotten too powerful, too big, economically too huge, population too huge. And China is not destroying nations around the world the way the U.S. has. So, they need China. And apparently enough of the U.S. ruling elite have realized this, that they have backed off at least a little on their anti-China rhetoric. You don't hear a lot about the so-called genocide against the Uyghurs that has involved zero killing. You know, one of those genocides, the zero killing genocide. So they've realized this, and so that's what this meeting was about. It was about trying to get the United States back in kind of the good graces of China, and we can work together. And apparently, they're sending our pandas back, or their pandas back, because they just took them. The pandas just left. Like literally, I live in Baltimore. Like 2 weeks ago, there was a big advertising campaign about it. It was the last days in Washington D.C. to see the panda. Well, he's going to be back on the boat any minute to get the pandas back, but. So they do all of this, and then here is what Biden does in the press conference, essentially immediately after. And the key, and I'm sorry for those of you watching the podcast because I can't do it justice, the key is to watch Antony Blinken's face as this happens.
Mr. President, after today, would you still refer to President Xi as a dictator? This is a term that you used earlier this year.
Well, look, he is. I mean, he's a dictator in the sense that he is the guy that runs a country that is a communist country that is based on a form of government totally different than ours.
Mr. President.
So for those of you listening to the podcast, which if any of you like podcasts, it's called the Leecamp Show. Biden says, look, he is a dictator because their country is communist, which communist does not equal dictator. But anyway, and you see Antony Blinken's face like he just swallowed a turd. Like, oh, like, because you got to understand that these people, especially Blinken, their job all day long is to run around and try and control Joe Biden's idiocy. Just try and put him out when they have to, put him out in front of the cameras. And they try to not put him out in front of but when they have to, not to wipe the pudding off his chin and, try and get his underwear on the inside of the pants. And then they push him out on the stage and they just pray he doesn't say the stupidest shit you can imagine. And then, of course, he walks out there. He's like, look, he is a dictator. And Blinken looks like he has swallowed a massive turd because that sentence undoes all the work they've been doing for several months to try and get back in a relationship with China. I'll show it for those of you watching. I'll show it one more time.
Mr. President, after today, would you still refer to President Xi as a dictator? This is a term that you used earlier this year.
Well, look, he is. I mean, he's a dictator in the sense that he is the guy that runs a country that is a communist country that is based on form of government totally different than ours.
Mr. President, after.
By the way, you'll notice that you won't hear them call the crown prince of Saudi Arabia a dictator. You won't, even though there's zero democracy. China actually does have voting, and the way George Galloway described it, he was in China with me at the forum, and he spoke. I spoke as well, but he spoke at the full forum. I was in like an offshoot thing, but and the way he described it is that in China, you actually can, in your city, vote. The people can vote and actually change the policies. Like there are cities in China that have very different policies from other cities in China. Whereas the way it works in the US is you can change the parties, but you can never change the policies. So in the US, we have this faux democracy where we pretend we're changing back and forth between the parties and the policies never change. In China, they have one party, really. I mean, you can't elect a different party, but you actually can change the policies. So, make of that what you will. But I just realized what Blinken looks like there. He looks like it's not quite swallow a turd. He looks like, because it's more abrupt than that. I feel like when you swallow a turd, you probably start to realize that something's not right, and it's like slower. His is really abrupt as he hears the word, look, he is, as Biden says that. And so I realized it's like he got his dick caught in his fly. That's what that face was. It was Blinken got the old member caught in his zippery zip. All right. I think that's what we just saw. And it shows you can't control a senile old man when you put him in front of cameras and you ask him to speak. It never goes well.